What's happening, YouTube? It's been a while. Been a while. Been a journey. So, I don't know. I'm feeling compelled to show off something that came into my possession about a year ago. I've still actively been pursuing the law. Now that I recognize my standing, things are just completely different for me. Careful where you step. That's all I can say. But moving forward, and something that I know everybody's familiar with Freemasons, and all that good stuff. But I don't know if people really can truly understand or comprehend the role they have, the position they play now, today, in our conscious life, and the manipulation that they have and the power that they have. So I'm going to start out with what came into my possession a year ago. This is the history of Freemasonry by one of their own. As you can see, we have their Great Seal of Approval. Volume 1 of 7. It's good stuff. Now, this book was printed in 1921, so this book is almost 100 years old. And there's 7 of them. It goes into a lot of detail. A lot of detail that you won't find anywhere else but inside these books. And if you look at the detail, look at that. Leather bind, gold. And on here, this seal right here says, light is knowledge. So it's interesting that the Masons would have that type of slogan, light is knowledge. So one can only start to speculate and think about how deep that meaning is, light being knowledge. It gives a whole new light to the subject, does it not? So let's look at how this book was manufactured, if you will, published, produced. You can kind of see the embossment, right? And you got Noah's Ark on here too, by the way, right there, which is very interesting. So they obviously, Noah is tied into this a little bit, but we'll get to that as we explore these publication. Now this page right here is canvas, and on this side, that's oil. It's oil painted canvas. It's not a print off, okay? In 1921, somebody hand painted this page. I mean, if you could touch it, you'd be like, whoa, never seen such a thing. So the integrity of this book is huge, just on its own. There's just on its face, the way it's been published and produced. Now this page right here, it's red ink. We all know what red ink is, law of the land, right? Now notice, it's rice paper. Interesting, like Bible paper. Key word right there, Bible, okay? We'll get to that later. But what this red ink is an inscription of the author of this publication, 7 volumes, at 300 to 400 pages per volume. So we've got almost 2,000 pages coming from a who's who. We can take a trip back to the past. All right, we can remember that to be able to read and write was a privilege 100 years ago. To be able to own a book like this 100 years ago, you had to be privileged. Okay? We were coming out of slavery. Well, were we really coming out of slavery? Or were we transitioning into what is chattel slavery, 1933, right? Here is 1921, so this would have been before the Bankruptcy Act. Okay? And if you were in that lodge 100 years ago, well, you were a who's who of that day and time and era. You probably hanging out with J.P. Morgan, Thomas Edison. Okay? You would have been high rank to be able to learn this. So, let's move forward. Let's read that inscription and find out exactly who Mackey is. Notice red ink. No. Here is the date that the book was published, 1921. here is its crown of authority that you will not find any other truth except right here, any other record except right here. Okay? So let's read that rice paper. We'll start with that because, well, 7 volumes. This is going to be a journey. Albert Gallatin Mackey, a native of Charleston, South Carolina, and a graduate of the Medical College. There he became a member of the St. Andrew's Lodge No. 10 in that city, afterwards affiliating with Solomon's Lodge No. 1, soon filling the offices of Worshipful Master and Grand Secretary, also preparing the reports of Foreign Correspondence Committee of the Grand Lodge, as well as finding time to be a founder of Landmark Lodge No. 76, and to officiate successively as High Priest, a priest, Grand High Priest, and Grand High Priest. So it sounds like there's a High Priest, a Grand High Priest, and General Grand High Priest. 3 positions of priesthood within Freemasonry. Keep that as a foundation. Priests. Where do we find priests? Religion, right? Moving forward, active in the Knights Templarism, he was honored as past Grand Warden of the Grand Encampment, was crowned Sovereign Grand Inspector General, and for years was Secretary General of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of the Southern Masonic jurisdiction. His writings are universally esteemed for their sincerity. Okay? Potent sincerity. Honest records. And common sense. There's our word common. 100 years ago, remember, common law. Sovereign, right? So you'll hear some words get floated around. Let's look into that past and see how the privileged communicated what they wrote down in records. Moving forward, a leader in research, he was a pioneer of that increasing number of the fraternity who values accuracy and whose first test of any reported fact is aimed directly to establish the truth or falsehood of the claim. His scholarship was sound, his knowledge of the institution profound, his ideals unalloyed. For him, the craft dealt with human character and mission. Upon these, he had weighed utterance, being ever frank of speech, yet holding fast his friends. Such was Brother Mackey. Okay, so he's a pretty esteemed fellow amongst the ranks, right? Operative Masons of the 10th century. So see, it goes beyond 1717, doesn't it? Masons of the 10th century. It's good stuff. We'll dig into the preface in the next video, but what we are going to look at is the table of content. Five pages of all volumes. What we can find is the tradition and history of Masonry, legendary history of Masonry, old manuscripts, legend of the craft, Hallowell poem and the legend, origin of the Hallowell poem, legend of the gem of Masonic history, origin of geometry, legend of Lamech's sun and pillars, legend of Hermes, Tower of Babel, legend of Nimrod, legend of Euclid, legend of the temple, extension of the art into other countries, right? The list just goes on. Jesuits in Freemasonry. Turn the page. This, I mean, so much to cover. One video is just not enough. Legend of Enoch. Noah and the Noachites. Remember, I mentioned Noah. Early Freemasonry in Scotland. Royal Ark Masonry in America. Because remember, America in 1776. Well, let's go back to like this continent, this dry piece of earth 1,000 years ago. There was no Freemasons here, was there? And guess what? There was clean air, clean water, right? No license, no permit, no way to mark you and track you. So this is going to go somewhere. You'll realize in the upcoming election year, 2020, is just a little ways away. And then it's next year, more chaos. But that's for another time. It's interesting. Just understand this, that White House was built by Freemasons. The money you spend is Freemason money. And the religion you follow is Freemason religion. Now, that's not to take away from Most High, the one that created all of us with divine creation. Okay? And that doesn't take away from universal law. Something that's beyond the flesh. We'll start to get into the spirit and law. Peace, love, and fortitude.